So in the case of an emergency where an aircraft loses its engines, how far can it still fly? 5 miles, 50 miles? I mean, it depends on a lot of different factors, but you're about to find out, and we're gonna go over some numbers that are quite amazing. So my name is Steve, the Wired Flyer, and I break down aviation concepts in a simple to understand way. And today's video is a bit of a fun one. We're gonna be going over some real life examples of how far airplanes can glide for. We'll be going over airliners, general aviation, aircraft, and even high performance gliders. And we'll have a better understanding of how much time these pilots have to make critical decisions. So let's dive right in. So firstly, let's just quickly go over what gliding is, because when, let's say, you lose your engines, you don't just fall out of the sky. You keep on gliding, and you do that by trading altitude for distance. And the amount of altitude that you lose compared to the distance you travel forward is your glide ratio. So a 5-to-1 ratio would mean that for every 1,000 feet of altitude lost, you travel 5,000 feet forward. So now let's compare three different planes, the Cessna 172 to the Boeing 747, and then we'll also compare it to a high performance glider. Firstly, looking at a small aircraft like a Cessna 172, it has a glide ratio of about 9-to-1, meaning that for every 1,000 feet lost, it can travel around 9,000 feet forward. And to give you some context, 9,000 feet forward is about 1.5 miles. So let's look at a typical real life situation now. So let's say you're cruising at 5,000 feet in a Cessna 172. Well, if you multiply that by its glide ratio, which is 9, so 9 times 5,000, that gives you 45,000 feet of distance that you are able to travel. And to put that into context, that's about 8.5 miles or 13.5 kilometers. And although that seems like a pretty decent distance to find a field or golf course or somewhere to land, the pilot only has about 5 minutes in the air, and that definitely depends on the wind and many different atmospheric conditions. So moving on to a commercial jet, and specifically we will be going over the Boeing 747, which certainly could have passengers on it. It has a glide ratio of about 15-to-1. So for every 1,000 feet lost, you can travel about 15,000 feet forward. And 15,000 feet is just short of 3 miles and about 4.5 kilometers. So how far can a Boeing 747 glide if it loses its engines at 35,000 feet? Well, 35,000 multiplied by 15 gives you 525,000. And that means that you are able to glide for about 100 miles, which is 160 kilometers. That gives the crew roughly 20 to 25 minutes of glide time to land the airplane safely with many souls on board. And now let's go over a high performance glider such as the ASW-27. Now it has a glide ratio of 48-to-1. So for every 1,000 feet lost, you can travel about 48,000 feet forward. That's about 9 miles or 14.5 kilometers. So if it's at only 5,000 feet, it can glide like 45 miles or 75 kilometers. That's about 10 to 15 minutes, but it can actually be much longer depending on where you are and if you're using lift, such as thermals. Now, the most famous emergency landing is probably the miracle on the Hudson, where there was a bird strike where they lost both engines just after takeoff. So the pilot only had a couple of minutes to decide what to do. And he decided to land the aircraft on the Hudson River, which is extremely dangerous, but he was able to do it in an incredible fashion, saving every single soul on the aircraft. And they made a whole movie on this called Sully, and although personally I didn't think it was the best acting, I still thought the story was amazing. And in my opinion, it's definitely still worth a watch. And by the way, I have a video called Gliding 101 where I go over the best glide speed and kind of the science behind the glide. So if you want to check that out, go to my channel or just click the link in the video description below. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you so much for that. And if you could give this video a like and a comment, or a like and a subscribe, that really helps the channel grow. But regardless, I will continue to be making lots of aviation content on this page. And don't forget, keep learning, stay motivated, and chase your dreams.